all these contentious issues that are still so heavily debated that there's no consensus within these democracies, and say that there's just an objective truth and we provide it, therefore we win. That's not how debating works. And we think you can't just march up here with an Australian accent and say this is what I believe, therefore this is what the rest of people should believe, and this is what should be in rights. Yes, sir.
The point of this topic is what is best for social movements, not what is best for society. Can you explain why, therefore, it is
Okay,
best
whoa,
for
whoa,
social
whoa.
movements?
First of all, that just demonstrates how much you've mischaracterized this debate. This debate is about, that was our entire second speaker's matter, about how we can't just say this is best for the animal rights movement, therefore it's absolutely best for every single individual in society. We asked you to engage with it on this level, that just be, even if you were correct in saying that these people now get more representation, you had to defend why the animal rights lobby should be superior to the rest of the best interests of the rest of society. We asked you to do that, and your third speaker didn't do so. That's where you haven't understood your burden in today's debate, and that's where their failure lies. But then the next is looking at the nature of these places. That it's not just about the United States 50 years ago in today's debate. This is about all the democracies around the world. But there is no consensus about whether or not abortion is such a good thing. There is no consensus about whether or not all these contentious things is something that people want and is something that's best for their country. And also, they think that just because that they haven't understood that a lot of judges are re-elected based on the majority. That's what happens in Spain. That's what happens in the majority of South America in today's debate. That they've told us that the majority is so wrong, but then their solution is a Supreme Court which changes with the change in majority within most of the nations. That's how they don't actually create legitimate change, they don't create effective change, and they've misunderstood their burden in today's debate. So now, on my next issue, I'll be looking at what's going to be effective change. Now, so even if every single social movement was automatically legitimate, was automatically looking for the best interests of society, wasn't just focusing on an isolation thing, and was looking about what's best for the people, which we think is our burden to protect, and we think you're now change of mandate of just claiming to represent a small minority at the expense of everyone else in society is illegitimate. We'll be showing about you, even if that was the case, they don't bring about effective change for those people that they claim to protect in today's debate. Because we think that they've told us that the reason they go to court is because they have no societal buy-in. Because they couldn't even, within their own state, get a single seat in parliament. They couldn't represent a single constituency. They don't even have an interest group to make a lobby. That means you have like 6 people supporting this cause if they couldn't even create any sort of lobby. If they're so unpopular in this case, if they're so unpopular to the extreme that they're talking about, they couldn't even have an interest group or lobby, we think that the court isn't going to be ruling in their favor. A court that is supposedly representing this majority in the countries we're talking about isn't going to be talking about this. But also we think you'll undermine the legitimacy of courts. So even if courts were to somehow change in their ideals, change in representing society, change their affiliations, and back up this minority, we simply believe that it delegitimizes the courts in the eyes of the people, so that means they're never in the future going to be able to have effective rulings. Because people aren't likely to buy into this in today's debate. They're not going to recognize the court, they're not going to recognize the court rulings if these bills are as unpopular as they'd like us to believe. If these movements are struggling so much and they don't have any interest group to create any sustainable lobby, ladies and gentlemen, we believe the court's not going to side in their favor, and even if by some miracle they did, that ruling isn't going to have any legitimacy, and it's just going to undermine the courts in the future. Now, they just haven't understood with all of their examples of like Brown versus the Board of Education, Roe versus Wade, that happened when judges were reappointed based on the majority within the Supreme Courts of Democrats within the United States. And we think even if it's true that they do just get changed, but they still can be independent, all you do is incentivize the parties to put only judges that are going to rule in their favor within the Supreme Court. If you're saying they changed their mind, then all you're doing is making a situation where the Supreme Court loses its power. Yes, sir.
Your second speaker conceded in response to a information that bad minorities didn't have rights because majorities rejected them. Doesn't that concede your whole case?
No. We think that you just haven't understood the idea of an assuming but not conceding layer. We've taken this on 2 grounds. First of all, that we don't think every single social movement deserves disproportionate power to steamroll over what society wants and what's in the best interest for society. Just because you guys haven't defended that doesn't mean we made a contradiction. And our second level of response was even if we did always want to support these social movements, how we think we better support them when they have lobby groups, when they go through elected legislature. We brought you both of those lines and we ask your next speaker to engage with them. So now we look, they haven't dealt with the idea of the finality of the decisions of a court. The idea that if they get rejected, then it's very difficult for you to ever reemerge as a movement. The idea that you antagonize government because they feel attacked. They feel like they have to spend their limited resources on but like a really long time to get to a decision is going to be more efficient. And even if that's the truth, we think democracy isn't about who can pay for the best lawyer in today's debate. That's not how you make decisions. You make decisions by campaigning. You make decisions by going into what your people actually want. And ladies and gentlemen, all of votes matter in today's debate. Like, it just doesn't make much sense. Lobbies are united, I guess, with the LGBTQI community, all the people trying to represent these individuals. They get power, and they get campaigning. But ladies and gentlemen, what they're talking about is isolating these groups, breaking them down into very smaller issues, having them go to the Supreme Court on a very small issue. It's not about women's rights or gays' rights. It's about a tiny example of like gay adoption in this specific county of this specific state. That's the sort of things that go to the Supreme Court. If they want to create widespread change, they should be encouraging widespread lobbies, where they can unite the interest groups of all the people they're talking about so that they can have effective change in today's debate. So in conclusion, we've shown you, they haven't shown why even if it was effective, which we've shown you it isn't, this is acceptable. We challenge them next year to engage in those grounds. If they truly want what's best for social groups and what's best for society, then they want what South Africa's proposing, because that's what we're dealing with. Thank you.
Thank you, Speaker, for your speech, and welcome back the Leader of the Opposition in South Africa.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is a reason why today's social movements spend their time and money trying to garner popular political support. There's a reason why people are still marching on Washington. There's a reason why people are still putting measures on their ballots. And that reason is because people understand that only through these methods do you achieve real and meaningful change. And that's been a consistent line from side opposition throughout this debate, a line that hasn't been properly engaged with by side proposition. The two questions then that I'll be dealing with in this reply are firstly what we achieve through courts, and secondly what we achieve through the legislature in this debate, weighing up which is a better route. So in terms of what we achieve through courts, what side proposition think we should be doing? They gave us the examples of Brown versus Board of Education and Roe versus Wade as the shining bastions of their case. But we told you that these judgments were won when a Democratic majority, the Democratic Party, was appointed to the Senate. That if not for lobbying an elected legislature, the ruling would have been different. If we hadn't been voting in a Democratic majority, we wouldn't have had a Liberal court. Then what? Well, we would have lost the case. We would have set a damaging and irreversible legal precedent. We would have lost steam as a political movement. These potential risks and harms were not dealt with by side proposition, despite coming up in my speech. When did real change happen then? And we're sorry if we sounded like history teachers down our bench, but Australia needed a lesson in this debate. Because in terms of the civil rights movement, for example, they achieved change through the March on Washington, as a minority in that country, through the March to Montgomery, through sit-ins and teach-ins, and through decades of action, and eventually that culminated in elected legislative change by Lyndon Johnson. That's how we finally got equality in that country, not through Brown versus Education, not through the courts. What about the rest of the world, though, where they haven't engaged in this debate at all? Africa, Asia, South America, most of Europe. These countries where courts are restricted to enforcing legislation that's been passed by an elected parliament. They haven't dealt with these situations, where there's often a fine tension between the two spheres of government or in constant friction, where there would be huge antagonism when the legislature overruled the politicians. What would happen in Uganda, for example? What happened in South Africa when the Minister for Education ignored court rulings ordering her to obey minimum norms and standards? We think we lose the support of the government. But moreover, we lose the support of the majority because we get their resentment. We've bypassed them. We don't get popular support for our cause. And so we actually actively undermine what we're trying to achieve as a political majority. So even if you do win your little court case, which we proved that in most cases you won't, you still undermine your cause and you're still left with a gaping problem. What do we we achieve then through the legislature? And the first thing they told us was that minorities just can't achieve any legislative change. We showed you that this is a disingenuous assertion. We showed you that you can achieve change as a loud minority in a democratic system. Moreover, we showed you that where a majority in a country is so opposed to your cause, going to court will not achieve meaningful change. Going to an elected legislature and then to the courts to enforce those laws using those two different systems as a clever and strategic social movement, that's how you achieve meaningful change in society. Lastly, we gave you a line that we don't want every minority movement running to the courts, because the courts don't weigh up the comprehensive costs that could be incurred with a decision. What if different rights or way-ups are being considered? In the sacrifice example, what about if a court rules in favor of a minority, but in so doing trespasses on the majority's rights? What about those cases where we need an elected legislature to be making the decisions? We think that, at best, what we get from side proposition is superficial change, and we don't think that's good enough. We don't think they've dealt with cases where judges are not re-elected, or where judges are re-elected. We don't think they've dealt with countries where there's a tension between the government and the judicial system. We don't think they've dealt with countries where even if you got a superficial court decision, you'd still have discrimination, you'd still have antagonism, and you wouldn't get the meaningful change that side opposition through our model, which we support, you do. If you want serious change in society, if you want what's best for minorities, you have to go with side opposition.
I thank the speaker for his speech and welcome back to the leader of the team.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this opposition walked a fine line throughout this debate. A fine line between, on one hand, saying the majority has a right to live in a country where the minority is oppressed, while at the same time saying, but wink wink nudge nudge, we know these people are racists, but we need to assuage them for the time being. We never said the courts are perfect, and neither is the legislature. But in a context where ranked majoritarianism has failed gay people, has failed African Americans time and time again, we told you in our Australian accents that the court would be far better than the legislature to push through that change. Two things were proved throughout our case. First, that this will lead to better outcomes for minorities, and second, that in principle it's more democratic. On the first of those things, we told you from the get-go it was legitimate for minority social groups to preference their interests over the rights of society, and that's where that debate took place. The opposition staked their claim on three things. First of all, that a backlash would result from steamrolling the majority. We told you, first of all, that rights denied is just as important as rights that are slightly obstructed or rights that people try to get in the way of. That even in the best examples they gave of Brown v. Board of Education, that children still got some kind of education under that model. That under the abortion rule, that despite the protests of some people, that they still had the right to bodily autonomy. Either this opposition thought that we needed to wait for the whole of society to come on board, in which case that change is cripplingly slow and we deny generations their rights, or they rush through it in legislature and you get the same kind of backlash. That was the choice in this debate. Either we delay change or we rush through change through the legislature, in which case all of the harms they talked about still exist. The second thing they talked about is that there are some problems with courts, it's hard to access. We recognise that it is hard for minorities, but this is where the lack and the unwillingness of the opposition to be comparative really hurt them. It is expensive, but it's easier to access a pro bono lawyer than to hire a lobbyist. It is hard for people who are politically disenfranchised. But again, it's easy to operate within a system that respects the rule of law than being drowned out by all of the other concerns of government. It is lengthy, but again, the length of an oral argument is far shorter than filibustering. People with no voices are far more likely to get that kind of change under the courts. Finally, on this issue of permanency, we pointed out that this is totally dependent material that courts would, in the most cases, make the right decision. We furthermore told you that it's important that those rights are entrenched. That was analysis we heard little response to. So we led to better outcomes for minorities on our side. Second issue, in principle, is it more democratic? First, they told you that it's principally against the spirit of democracy to override the will of the majority. First, and importantly, this was analysis the opposition never responded to. Often, we're not even talking about majoritarianism, because the majority of Western liberal democracies support gay rights, but there is still no gay marriage. That's a failure of democracy that the opposition never dealt with throughout their free speakers. But second of all, we told you, insofar as the majority agree on something, that their rights matter less than the rights of the minorities. It was a choice between the right of black children to have a quality education versus the right of white parents not to see other black kids at their school. It was a choice between a gay person being able to marry the person they love versus straight people living in a society that doesn't recognize gay rights. We thought that was the appropriate comparison, and we thought the minorities had the most to lose. Second, by the time second and third, they tried to hedge their bets on this judges are elected thing. First, we pointed out it's often hard to predict. We gave you the example of Justice Souter, why that's not a perfect way to do it. But second, we told you that parliamentarians